Hey, you! Welcome to Culture Wedge. Thanks for joining me today. Remember, please subscribe, like, and comment this video to give me a little bit of pleasure out of making this. I enjoy everybody watching, but I also want to see your feedback, so comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. Now, in case you don't know already, Culture wedge, what does that mean? Well, it means we're taking a wedge and we're driving it into the circle of today's culture, the strange bubble that people seem to be in that justifies the crazy actions of those who control entertainment and society today. Because let's face it, those who have the influence today are the ones who are the worst. So, we're going to drive a wedge into that by changing culture. Remember, you've got to use your voice before you lose it. And so by me doing this and by you watching this, we're making a difference in today's culture. So today, we're going to talk about social media. Now, I think we can all enjoy social media. I think there are some positives of social media, and there's also some negatives of social media. Before I get too far in this, I need to establish what exactly I'm talking about whenever I say social media. Well, there are the obvious ones. There's platforms like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, which is a part of Facebook, but nevertheless a common one. And there's also things like TikTok, which has become pretty popular. I don't use TikTok because I have better things to do with my day, but nevertheless, and one that's not always thought of as a social media platform, which is YouTube, but it is social media. And so we're going to consider these among the others there are that I didn't mention whenever we're talking about social media. And so, what are some general positives here? Well, these social media platforms allow us to talk to other people that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. Relatives who live far away, friends who maybe even live next to us or live across the country or across the world. We're able to talk to them on the internet through these social media platforms, which make it a lot easier, and we're able to see what each other posts, what each other says on our smartphones, on our computers, at the click of a button. And it's fantastic. There are other good things too. We're able to catch the news. We're able to catch news videos. And people are allowed to post other information about businesses and pretty much whatever you want, as long as it is allowed on the platform. Those are some general positives. There are many others, but there's also general negatives, and much more specific negatives is actually what we're going to get into today. But some general negatives, people will tend to go onto social media constantly, sometimes looking at the same thing over and over, sometimes just going digging and trying to find something new to look at in order to waste time or whatever it might be. People will post negative things on social media that just lead to trouble. Some go on social media just in order to cause trouble. And there are many negatives that I haven't mentioned that can be brought up just because you've got to consider the fact that this is people putting this information, putting their opinions on social media. And so the problems that can come up with people interacting person to person can also come up on social media. And I would say this problem can be magnified several times over on social media. So we're going to look at some more of the negatives and some of the specifics of bad things that we've seen come from social media. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on younger people. So from about my age which is 25 on down, because that's where the effects tend to be the worst and the most noticeable and the best predictor of what's going to come in our future. So that's where we're going to focus today. And I want us to take a look at an article that is in New York Post, which says, upstate New York teen dies by suicide after being blackmailed over photos. It says, a high school sophomore from upstate New York killed himself as he was being blackmailed over personal photos that he had sent on social media, his family said Monday. Riley Basford, 15, died last week at his father's home in Potsdam after being bombarded with threats online about the snapshots, the Watertown Daily Times reported. I will not go to my grave without honoring Riley every day of my life because he did not want to die, his mother, Mary Roday, sorry if I butchered that, told the newspaper. Roday said Riley had been communicating on Facebook with a user posing as someone else. The teen eventually ended up sending the person personal snapshots, the report said. But then Riley received a message that he would need to give them $3,500 or the private images would be shared with his family, friends, and on social media. They continued to bombard him, and finally they broke him. His father, Darren Basford, told the newspaper. He thought this was the only way out because he didn't want to be embarrassed. Within hours of receiving the threats, the teen took his own life, the outlet reported. He couldn't reason out what was happening to him, and it was happening so fast, his mother said. They put him into such a panic that he went out of his mind. His parents are now warning other parents about the dangers of social media. I want to get the message out to parents that there is no safe social media, his father told the paper. You need to talk to your kids about all social media, know who they're talking to, and have the kids know who they're talking to. This is absolutely a tragic story about this teenager who had thought that he was in conversation with, I believe, a girlfriend or maybe someone that it appeared to be he had started a relationship with. And so he had begun to send private photos to the person, and it turns out that these people were actually harassing him and bullying him, and now were threatening him in exchange for money, basically holding him hostage, and he, out of fear of embarrassment, killed himself, committed suicide. Now, we've seen stories like this in the past. There have been similar ones, and with actually very similar circumstances as with this story. Now, this isn't why I'm talking about social media necessarily. I'm not just complaining about it because there's a chance your teen is going to commit suicide and be attacked by people. No, but this shows how extreme things can get for younger people who are vulnerable on social media. It shows the extent of the bullying, the aggressiveness that teens can come upon and anyone can come upon on social media. And so you've got to think about what can happen on social media, on these platforms, in similar circumstances, but with a smaller threat. You see, people are harassed, especially teens are harassed on social media all the time. They're bullied by their peers, even maybe by their friends. And it is a serious problem. And it leads to teens considering suicide more and more, or just in overall being depressed. And it's not only bullying, it's the fact that people have relied more and more on social media for things that they used to get in face-to-face social environments. Now, people will go to social media and post something just to see how many people will like it, how many people will comment on it. in order to get that dopamine release that we used to get just by talking to each other and appreciating each other's presence. And now people look for it on social media through interaction with a post or a picture, whatever you might put on there. But when those likes and those comments don't come, then it's depressing to the person who posted it. It's discouraging and it's unsatisfying, and it can lead the person, especially younger people, to continue to post things that are more and more aggressive, more and more personal, maybe more and more offensive to someone else. And that's going to lead to problems for the person posting it and perhaps someone else that the person is talking about. And so the culture of social media has become especially with certain platforms, the absolute medium of communication in our society. The president posts on social media and sometimes announces serious stuff. Donald Trump gave his opinion plenty of times on social media. News is all over social media. Very influential people give their opinions on social media. And so people are becoming more and more attached to it, which leaves more and more opportunities for people to take advantage of each other. It leaves more and more opportunities for businesses to take advantage of you, but through advertisements, using your data in order to curtail the advertisements for your interests, things you've been looking at. And so this serious attachment to these platforms, YouTube, Facebook, all these others, I believe has given us more negative effects than positive. I myself tend to use YouTube as my TV, but I'm very careful about what I watch. I don't go and just looking for videos. I only watch videos from the certain people that I subscribe to, and most of them are people that I can trust to watch their news or their content. On social media, I'm only friends with and I only pay attention to people I know well, or at least I know enough of to trust to see what they post, the pictures they give, their opinions, so on and so forth. But we've got to make sure that all of us are doing the same thing. And we got to especially make sure that our kids, our teenagers, are doing the same thing as well. So what I would ask parents to do is to watch over your kids. It's not always possible. You can't hover over your teens, your kids all the time. But try your best to keep them from being on social media all the time. Try your best to watch over who they're listening to, who they're posting to. That's difficult as well, but perhaps require your teens to be friends with you on whatever platforms it is. Watch how much time they're spending on a certain platform. Help them to be less dependent on these social media platforms in order to live social lives. That can be difficult, perhaps, if your teen is not as socially connected as others. But we've got to keep from being so dependent on social media that our lives depend on it. And this is what many people have seen, especially during the pandemic, that people's lives have become dependent upon platforms like this. We saw kids during the pandemic committing suicide because they had to use Zoom classes and were so upset by not being able to see each other in person that they couldn't live anymore. These are two extremes: total dependence upon social media, and then separation as such that the child feels it can no longer live. We want a happy medium, which means not trying to separate kids, letting kids go back to school, but also allowing opportunities for teens and kids to spend time with each other in person. So we've got to be careful as parents. I'm not a parent myself, but I can tell you, watch what your kids are posting on social media. Make sure they don't become dependent on it for all of their social interactions. and make sure they're careful what platforms they use, because certain platforms are much more vulnerable to problems and to addiction than others. To be honest, I don't like TikTok at all. I wouldn't recommend you use it because people will post absolutely anything in order to get likes, get interactions. There are others that are safer. People watch YouTube. People are pretty safe on YouTube, I would say, because there are much more choice and you can be much more careful about what you see. But the point here is, with Culture Wedge, we're going to take a look and address the culture as it is. And as I've said, what we see in today's culture is a severe dependence on social media in many, many aspects of life. A common sense approach to this would be looking for satisfaction and looking for attention elsewhere besides on your phone. The common sense approach with this would be just to get out and go to environments, go to places, go to people you know, and talk to them, interact with them. Go to church more, go to church events more. There's even things you can do that you've never done before in order to interact with other people. This is probably my number one recommendation, is just go and talk to other people in person. It's not that difficult. People may be busy, but you can find new ways to do so as well. Or if it's maybe not interacting with another person, you can spend time reading books, doing other things, maybe playing games if that's what you've got, to just stay off social media. We want to interact with other people, but we don't want to get addicted to looking at the same things over and over and trying to find drama, trying to find conversations between others, and basically stalking people. So, in conclusion, be careful and watch out for problems on social media that can come up, like what happened with this teenage boy. That's a severe problem. Most problems that teens have, that people have, won't be that severe, but there will be similar to that: bullying, harassment, and at the same time, people will begin to be depressed, upset, because they feel like people aren't seeing what they say, they aren't interacting with them. And overall, in the culture today, people's dependence on social media is rather ridiculous. People's dependence on communication via a platform is rather ridiculous. And we have got to get back to face-to-face interaction, finding entertainment in person or elsewhere other than on your phone, and just having our social lives be more than looking at a screen. So, that's been today's episode of Culture Wedge. Comment if you got any questions, and I'll try my best to answer them. But my name is Brandon, and thanks for watching.